Could you please read this letter, ma'am? It's really, really crucial. With his little fingers gripping a crumpled envelope as though it were his most valuable possession. The 8-year-old boy's shaking voice reverberated through the silent lobby of the 5-star hotel. Victoria. Ashford's Louboutin heels sounded sharply against the floor as he came to a sudden stop in the center of the marble hallway. The 45-year-old entrepreneur, who owns one of the biggest hotel chains in the nation, regarded the child who had ruined her morning with contempt. The girl was obviously unusual. Her brown eyes moved slowly and aimlessly, not focusing on anything in particular. She was visually impaired, as evidenced by the white cane in her left hand and the cautious manner she felt her way through the air. The Grand Plaza Hotel's immaculate, mostly white surroundings stood in stark contrast to her dark skin. How did this kid enter this place? Victoria whispered to his personal assistant, James, who took out his phone right away and dialed security. Please, the girl begged, her voice cracking a little. According to my granny, it was urgent. You should read this, she said. Victoria gave a mocking laugh. I don't have time for silly games, sweetie. James, get her out of here right now. However, the child's resolve caused Victoria to pause for a second. The girl was not intimidated or afraid. Instead, she exuded a certain calmness, as though she were privy to something that no one else was. Calmly, my name is Jade, the girl said. Victoria's blood raced cold when she read, and the letter is about him and my grandmother, about what happened 30 years ago. No one should know about that. No one who is still alive, at least. What nonsense is this? Victoria forced a nervous laugh. I don't know his grandmother, young lady. You're obviously confused. Jade tilted her head slightly, an almost imperceptible smile appearing on her lips. Do you know Ruby Johnson? Are you sure? The name hit Victoria like a punch in the stomach. Ruby Johnson, a woman she had sworn to forget. A woman whose secret she had carried for 3 decades. James, Victoria whispered, her voice losing all of her previous arrogance. Leave us alone. But now, Mrs. Ashford. Victoria knelt before Jade, her hands quivering slightly as James grudgingly retreated. How do you know that name? Because his grandmother was Ruby Johnson, she also told me a fascinating story of a 15-year-old girl named Victoria Chen, whom he had previously assisted, before she passed away last week. His name was Victoria Chen. When she realized that being white would be more beneficial in business, she buried her Asian background along with her name. Everything Victoria had created may be destroyed by the secrets that appeared to vibrate through the letter in Jade's grasp, her business, her standing, and years of skillfully constructed lies. What was written in this letter by your grandmother? Victoria's voice was hardly heard as she asked. Jade grinned once more, but this time it was with an 80-year-old's wisdom, as her grandma Ruby used to say, when someone has lived their entire life pretending to be someone they're not. The truth has a funny way of coming out when we least expect it. Victoria surveyed the opulent foyer, realizing for the first time how many of her staff and visitors were surreptitiously observing him. They all witnessed the most vulnerable time in his life. Victoria muttered, please, and extended a shaky hand. Jade stepped back and held the envelope to her chest, saying, give me the letter. Victoria felt the floor vanish beneath her feet as she said, first, you have to promise me something. You have to promise that you'll read every word out loud right here in front. Of all these people, a blind girl who appeared to see far more than any of the adults around him was ready to reveal 30 years of secrets. Nobody understood that, while Victoria shuddered in terror. Jade was in possession of a letter and the ability to radically alter the course of 2 families' histories. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if this tale of family secrets and postponed justice has caught her attention. Ruby Johnson's revelations in that letter will compel her to reevaluate her assumptions about privilege, identity, and self-deception. With trepidation, Victoria glanced around the foyer to see how many others could be listening to this exchange. It was the morning rush hour at the Grand Plaza. Employees going about their daily jobs, executives sipping coffee, and tourists looking out. Everyone she needed to win over in order to maintain her power. Victoria said in a desperate whisper. Let's go to his office. Not like this. Not here. With a calm expression that was almost unsettling for a youngster, Jade cocked her head. According to Grandma Ruby, you always wanted to resolve conflicts out of sight. You were ashamed of the truth, she added. Victoria shot back quickly. I'm not ashamed of anything. However, his fear was evident in her voice. I simply support privacy. Not everyone should hear every exchange. As she ran her fingers over the marble counter's smooth surface, Jade muttered, funny. The truth only hurts when you've run away from her for too long, Grandma Ruby used to say. Victoria experienced a twinge of fear and rage. Listen here, young lady, Victoria replied, regaining some of her customary haughtiness. Who did this child think he was? And how had Ruby Johnson dared to involve a little girl in matters that should have been buried forever? I don't know what kind of stories her told you, but I am Victoria Ashford. I built this empire from the ground up. I employ thousands of people. I contribute millions in taxes to this city. I will not be blackmailed by a child who can't even see me properly. Jade's smile widened, and for the first time since she had entered the hotel, she looked genuinely amused. You think he can't see? Interesting. Grandma Ruby told me about that too. About what? Victoria asked, despite herself. About how you always underestimated people who looked different. How you thought being blind meant being dumb. How you thought changing from Victoria Chen to Victoria Ashford would change who he really is inside. Victoria felt the blood drain from her face. Victoria Chen, the name she had legally changed at 18, when she decided that an Asian businesswoman would face more obstacles than one with an Anglo-Saxon surname. The strategy had worked perfectly until now. I don't know where you got this information, but it's completely wrong. Victoria lied, her voice sounding false even to herself. Jade laughed, a crystalline sound that echoed through the marble lobby. Would you like to know what else Grandma Ruby told me? She said that when you were 15, you lived in a tiny apartment with her immigrant mother. She said that her mother worked as a cleaning lady at 3 different jobs to pay the rent. Victoria clenched her fists. This information was impossible. Her mother had died 10 years ago, taking these secrets with her. Or at least, that's what she thought. My mother was never a cleaning lady, Victoria said stiffly. She had his own business. Cleaning offices at night, Jade corrected gently. Including the office of the law firm where Ruby Johnson worked as a legal secretary. Victoria's world began to crumble. Ruby Johnson, legal secretary. 30 years ago, the pieces of a puzzle that she had tried to forget began to fit together in a terrifying way. Impossible, Victoria murmured. Ruby Johnson was just a black woman that no one took seriously. Jade finished the sentence. A woman who worked in the same building her mother cleaned. A woman who witnessed something that could have destroyed her life before she even began. Victoria felt her legs give way. She remembered Ruby Johnson now vaguely, like a shadow from a nightmare she had tried to forget. The woman who had shown kindness to a scared Asian kid and occasionally turned up to assist her mother on the weekends. The black woman who worked late at the office while her mother cleaned the higher floors. What did he observe? Grandma Ruby saw a lot back then, Victoria said, her voice barely audible as Jade pressed the letter closer to her bosom. She witnessed her mother's treatment by the solicitors. She observed how they discussed immigrants when they believed no one was paying attention. She also noticed something else, something you did under the belief that no one was watching. Victoria made a desperate falsehood, and I have no idea what you're talking about. Mr. Davidson, do you remember him? The firm's senior partner. Jade inquired nonchalantly, as though she were making a weather-related remark. Victoria's heart stopped. Mr. Davidson, the man who, when she was 15, attempted to sexually assault her while she was assisting her mother in cleaning the office. She had a man. Jade noted, I can tell you remember, based on your expression, Miss Ashford. Ruby Johnson witnessed everything that evening. She witnessed both what you did to protect yourself and what Mr. Davidson attempted to do. Now Victoria was trembling. She had pushed Mr. Davidson away in self-defense 30 years prior, and he had struck his head on the desk corner. Someone had knocked him out. Thinking she had killed him, she had panicked. She never found out what had happened to him because she had fled. He passed away. Victoria's voice broke as she asked. No, answered Jade softly. But he had a serious concussion. He woke up with no memory of what had happened. He was discovered, and the ambulance was called by Ruby Johnson. Victoria never spoke as she gazed at the girl with a mix of relief and fear. According to her, 15-year-old girl shouldn't have to live her entire life defending herself against a 45-year-old male. She thus reorganized the scene, cleaned away the evidence, and informed the police that Mr. Davidson had fallen on his own. Jade answered that Grandma Ruby believed in justice, because she was aware that decent people occasionally have to do tough things in order to survive. Additionally, she hoped that when you were in a position of authority one day, you would utilize it to assist those who were experiencing similar difficulties to yourself. She wished that he would utilize his authority to assist those who were experiencing the same difficulties as you. As she surveyed his opulent hotel, Victoria reflected on all the choices she had made over the years. How many times had he put greed ahead of kindness? How many times had he disregarded workers who resembled her mother or the scared young woman she used to be? What am I supposed to do for Ruby Johnson? Victoria inquired, fearing the response already. Jade grinned once more, but her expression was devoid of laughter. It was a smile from someone who knew he was going to make a big difference. Ms. Ashford. You have nothing to offer Grandma Ruby. She is no longer alive. However, I'm looking for something. What fairness? Jade said plainly. For everyone you crushed en route to your success. For every employee you let go in order to reduce expenses while raising their own compensation. For every family that lost their house as a result of your increase in the rent on his apartment complexes. Victoria could feel the ground moving under his feet. You're just a child. How could you know about these things? I'm blind, Mr. Ashford, not deaf, Jade said, sounding oddly ironic for an 8. Grandma Ruby also taught me that you learn to truly hear people when you can't see them. Victoria realized that her meticulously planned life, her hidden secrets, and her impeccable reputation were all in the hands of a girl he had undervalued from the start. The letter in Jade's hand seemed to radiate power. Victoria was unaware that Jade was only beginning to comprehend the information about Ruby Johnson while she was trying to do the same. There was much more in the letter she was holding than recollections of a 30-year-old occurrence. It had records capable of destroying every element of Victoria's existence, which she had constructed on deceit and easy amnesia. Victoria adjusted her blazer in an attempt to regain her calm, as though doing so would help her regain the control she felt slipping away. Listen up, lady. I have lawyers, but I'm not sure what sort of game you're playing. I have assets. I can really complicate her life. His smile grew when Jade cocked her head. Do you believe I arrived here by myself? That an 8-year-old blind girl entered a 5-star hotel on her own after crossing the city? Victoria felt the question as if it were a reality check. The girl hadn't arrived alone, of course. However, who could have planned this? Who brought you here? With part of her former haughtiness gone, Victoria asked. Grandma Ruby's friend, Jade said nonchalantly. Benjamin Hayes, MD, remember his... Victoria's face was absolutely devoid of blood. Dr. Hayes, the civil rights attorney who had defended a number of people who had been forced to leave their homes due to her real estate projects. The man who had repeatedly attempted to sue her for discrimination in housing. I can't, Victoria said. Hayes despises everything of my values. He doesn't hate her, Mrs. Ashford, Jade softly corrected. He detests her current state. Something has changed. Victoria hurriedly searched the foyer for Hayes' appearance. The hotel went about her daily business as usual. However, every visitor and staff member suddenly appeared to be a possible danger. Victoria tried to maintain a steady tone as she asked, Is Dr. Hayes here? He doesn't need to be, Jade said, gesturing a little towards the letter. Everything you need is in here. And also, she said, reaching into her dress's little pocket and removing an item that caused Victoria to immediately shudder. It was a small digital recorder that worked flawlessly. Have you been recording everything we say? Victoria's voice rose an octave as she inquired, as if discussing the weather. Jade clarified that Grandmother Ruby had always maintained that the truth has force when others can hear it, particularly when the subject of the recording is unaware that they are being recorded. Victoria's legs began to weaken. Every haughty utterance, every forced confession, and every vulnerable moment throughout the previous 20 minutes was captured on digital media. Desperately, Victoria exclaimed, "That's illegal. I can't be recorded without my permission." Jade quietly answered, "I can when I'm protecting myself. Doesn't a blind girl have the right to defend herself against grown-ups who might wish to harm her?" Victoria understood that she had stepped into a well-thought-out trap. Jade was more than a letter-carrying kid. She was a part of something much more structured and much larger. Victoria questioned, her voice barely audible, "What do you want?" Jade's voice remained unnaturally calm as she stated, "Dr. Hayes wants justice for the 347 families who lost their homes when you raised rents by 300% over the last 5 years, while she handed herself a $12 million bonus. He seeks recompense for the 89 workers who were let go on Christmas Eve in order to save costs. And I want you, his lady, to read this letter out loud in front of everyone here," Jade went on. "I want them to be aware of his true identity." "Never," Victoria murmured, attempting to regain control. "I'll never make such a fool of myself." As though she were a teacher addressing a recalcitrant pupil, Jade let out a sigh. "It's up to you, Ms. Ashford. You have 2 options. Read the letter in front of these few individuals right now, or explain its contents when copies are given to all of the city's newspapers, TV stations, and news websites tomorrow morning." Victoria exclaimed, her voice shaking with dread and rage. "You're blackmailing me." "No, ma'am," Jade softly corrected. "Before someone else tells your narrative, I'm giving you the chance to tell your own. It's better to be honest by choice than by necessity, Grandma Ruby used to say." Victoria glanced around the lobby once again, seeing that more people had paused to observe the odd exchange between a blind child holding a letter and the most influential businesswoman in the city. A few workers muttered to one another. Others had started using their phones to covertly record. Victoria responded, "If I read this letter, slowly, for the first time," Jade's smile was genuine as she asked, "What guarantees that you won't continue to pursue him? You don't understand yet, do you? We're not persecuting you, Mr. Ashford. We're freeing you. Freeing you from the prison he's built for himself," Jade patiently clarified. "From the lie of being Victoria Ashford when you are really Victoria Chen. From the weight of carrying secrets that make you afraid to look in the mirror every morning." Victoria felt tears burning in her eyes. When was the last time someone had seen her? Really seen her through all the layers of lies and constructs she had built around herself? "Ruby Johnson saved you 30 years ago," Jade continued, her voice now laden with a compassion that seemed impossible in someone so young. "She saved a scared little girl who just wanted to survive. But somewhere along the way, you forgot that little girl. You forgot that other people are scared too, that they just want to survive, too." "I haven't forgotten," Victoria whispered, surprising herself with her own honesty. "Then prove it," Jade said simply, holding out the letter. "Prove to that 15-year-old girl who still exists inside her that she hasn't become exactly the kind of person who used to hurt her." Victoria reached out, her fingers trembling as they brushed against the envelope that had become the center of her universe. She might actually take it, for a second. Then her phone rang, though it was his helper, James Ashford, Ms. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's a problem. Reporters are coming." Victoria glanced at Jade, who kept up that calm grin that had turned into a reassuring yet horrifying one, as someone contacted the press and said, "There's an important story happening in the lobby," Jade said. "You still have a choice. You can either narrate her story or allow others to do so. In any case, his story will be recounted today." Miss Victoria Chin. Victoria recognized for the first time in 30 years that she had no control over the future. In front of her, the blind girl had planned the ideal checkmate, and Victoria would only get closer to the truth. The only possible outcome with each step she took. Victoria was too preoccupied with ensuring her own survival to notice that Jade was carrying more than simply a letter from Ruby Johnson. She had the secret to rescuing not just Victoria from her deceptions, but also countless of others from the fallout. One question was still unanswered when the reporters drew closer to the motel. Would Victoria try to break the lock, or would she have the guts to use the key? Victoria was already setting up her cameras and testing the mics as she watched the reporters come through the lobby's glass doors. She had no say in the story that was about to be told, for the first time in decades. Jade whispered, "The choice is made," and returned the recorder to her pocket. I informed him that Victoria Ashford was at last prepared to show her true self. You're a child," Victoria pleaded frantically. "The reporters are here because I called him an hour ago." The most powerful people are sometimes the easiest to defeat because they are so accustomed to being feared that they forget to fear others. Jade said with that unnerving calm, "How could you have orchestrated all this? Grandma Ruby taught me that size has nothing to do with intelligence." The first reporter was hurrying towards them from across the foyer. Miss Ashford Torres phoned her camera team, who were already in place, and said, Victoria recognized Michael Torres from Channel 7 News, the same investigative journalist who had exposed 3 corporate scandals in the last year. "We were contacted on a story concerning your real identity and dubious business dealings. Could you comment?" Victoria's throat tightened with panic. "Nothing to say. It's private property." The lobby echoed with the clear voice of Jade, who actually interrupted. "Journalists believe a hotel lobby to be a public environment. That's what Dr. Hayes told him." Torres noticed the letter in Jade's hands and turned to face her. "And here's Jade Johnson," she said with a dignity that was remarkable for an 8-year-old grandchild of Ruby Johnson, who saved Ms. Ashford's life as a teenager and spent 30 years working as a legal secretary. "This is ridiculous," Victoria remarked, raising the pitch of her voice. Jade grinned and took the tape recorder out of her pocket once more, saying, "I have no idea what this kid is talking about. Would you rather I read Grandma Ruby's letter first? Or may I play the tape where you confess to being Victoria Chin and confirm the occurrence with Mr. Davidson 30 years ago?" Victoria's legs gave way. Her entire meticulously planned life would be destroyed in a matter of minutes, with everything captured on video. "Jade, please," Victoria pleaded, losing all self-control. "You're just a child. You don't understand the consequences of what you're doing." "I understand perfectly," Jade replied calmly. "I understand that you fired 89 employees on Christmas Eve. I understand that you raised rents by 300%, forcing 347 families to lose their homes. I understand that you gave yourself a $12 million bonus while cutting employee health benefits." Torres was frantically taking notes, her cameras capturing every word. Other journalists had arrived, forming a semicircle around Victoria and Jade. But most importantly, Jade continued, her voice gaining a strength that silenced the entire lobby. "I understand that Grandma Ruby saved a frightened 15-year-old girl 30 years ago, hoping that when that girl grew up and had power, she would use that power to help other frightened people." Victoria was visibly shaking now. "Ruby Johnson is dead. She can't prove anything," said a deep voice from behind the cameras. "No, but he can." It came from behind the cameras. Amidst the throng of reporters, Dr. Benjamin Hayes appeared with a battered leather briefcase and a plain suit that stood out against the glitter of the scene. "Dr. Hayes," Victoria muttered, fear finally washing over her face. At 65, the civil rights lawyer had the bearing of someone who had spent decades fighting for justice. He said simply, "Victoria," and then he faced the cameras. "I'm Benjamin Hayes, ladies and gentlemen, of the press. I have defended low-income households against powerful corporations for 30 years." He took out a stack of papers from his briefcase. "I have depositions from 127 former Ashford Enterprises employees, leasing agreements, financial documents, and internal emails that show a pattern of systemic discrimination, exploitation, and abuse of authority." Victoria attempted to retreat, but she was surrounded by a wall of cameras and reporters. Hayes went on, "I also have," and produced a sealed envelope, notarized and submitted to the state 20 years ago. Ruby Johnson's initial declaration of the events of 30 years ago served as a sort of insurance policy in case Victoria Chin ever forgot who she truly was. Victoria said, "This is blackmail," with desperation. "No, ma'am," Jade softly corrected. Hayes walked up to Victoria and said, "This is accountability." She displayed a combination of compassion and unflinching resolve. When Ruby Johnson was diagnosed with cancer 5 years ago, he came to me. She feared that Jade would grow up in a society where individuals like you still bully others like us. I transcended my beginnings. Every week, Victoria demonstrated, I established an empire. The foundation of your empire was the corpses of people who resembled you. With a tone of melancholy that seemed odd for someone so young, Jade spoke. Grandma Ruby reasoned that perhaps you may refrain from harming other frightened young girls. If you thought of the little girl who needed assistance, Torres came up with a microphone. Should we call her Miss Chen or Ms. Ashford? Would you like to address the claims that she routinely took advantage of underprivileged areas and altered her ethnic identity for commercial advantage? Victoria became aware of the violation of her own values as she surveyed the hotel lobby she had painstakingly constructed. The suffering of those who once resembled her had been used to pay for every marble surface, crystal chandelier, and opulent detail. Victoria started, but her voice didn't hold up. Jade took a step further and extended the letter for a final time. Ms. Chen, you still have the option to share your own narrative. Instead of being the ruthless person you have become, you have the option to be the courageous girl Grandma Ruby rescued. Victoria glanced at the message, then at the cameras, and finally at the calm expression on Jade's face. For an instant, it appeared as though she might truly muster the bravery to confront the reality. Rather, she spun around and attempted to flee, but there was nowhere to go. Journalists, employees, and visitors were all in the lobby, their phones capturing every moment of her public humiliation. The 347 families who lost their homes deserve answers. The 89 employees fired on Christmas Eve deserve answers. And Ruby Johnson, who spent the last years of his life wondering if he had done the right thing by saving her, deserves to know if her compassion was wasted. Ms. Chen Hayes calmly stated that running away won't work this time. Victoria stood in the center of the lobby, surrounded by cameras and microphones. Finally realizing that an 8-year-old blind girl had planned her total defeat, all she could mutter was how. Jade gave a final smile. Now, however, it was the smile of someone who had discovered that sometimes small hands must do the work of justice. The powerful only see what they want to see, Grandma Ruby used to say. You observed a helpless girl who was blind. You had no idea that you were staring at someone who had been training for this moment for years. Victoria Chinafta, all that was his true name, realized that she had undervalued not just Jade, but also the strength of memory, justice, and truth, which always manages to surface. As the cameras kept rolling and questions came pouring in from all directions, Victoria was too preoccupied with her own demise to realize that this public revelation would merely be the first domino to fall. For months, Dr. Hayes had been preparing the court case that would transform her embarrassment into disastrous financial repercussions. And Jade continued to harbor secrets that would guarantee that no amount of cash or power could protect her from what lay ahead. Victoria Chen was destitute and socially ruined 6 months later. In order to compensate the 347 evicted families, his hotels were sold. In a matter of weeks, the lie-based empire fell. 9-year-old Jade went to the community center that Dr. Hayes had established using some of the compensation funds. The truth sets everyone free, Grandma Ruby whispered, stroking the piano that had been donated by one of Victoria's former hotels. As he observed scores of local children receiving free schooling, Dr. Hayes grinned. 30 years ago, his grandma hoped that by saving a 15-year-old girl, she would assist others. He was ultimately the one who kept that commitment. Like her mother did many years ago, Victoria Chen was now employed as a cleaner. The irony was not overlooked. Using our pain to create something better rather than destroying those who have wronged us is what true retaliation is all about. Jade demonstrated that justice is ageless, and that often the most potent triumphs are carried by the smallest fighters. If he thinks the truth always prevails. For more tales that demonstrate that the bravery of a person who is adamant about doing the right thing is still the greatest force in the world. Subscribe to the channel.